In the windswept plains of 1870s Texas, a solitary Comanche warrior stumbled upon a haunting sight: an unconscious white girl tied to a barbed fence, left to die. Instead of walking away, he untied her, carried her home, and gave her something she never had: a name, a family, and freedom. What happens next? Let's start the story. The land stretched wide and unforgiving under the hot Texas sun, where the wind rolled like spirits whispering through the brush. It was 1872, and the border between what settlers called civilization and what the Comanche called home had been soaked with blood, betrayal, and silent understanding. Tocano, a solitary Comanche warrior with streaks of gray in his braid, moved quietly across the plain. He lived by the rhythm of nature now, far from both the tribal fires and the white man's towns. Alone by choice, he had grown weary of war and retreated into the arms of the earth, hunting only what he needed and speaking only when the wind had no answer. It was near dusk when he saw the vultures, circling low, their shadowy wings carved across the amber sky like torn cloth. Something below them wasn't dead yet, that he could feel. He approached slowly, his steps silent as he weaved through tall grass and dried mesquite. Then he saw her. She was young, no more than 18, with pale skin sunburned to raw red, lips cracked, hair matted with dust and blood. Her hands were tied behind her, her ankles lashed to the wooden fence with rusted wire. Whoever had done this hadn't just meant for her to die. They meant for her to suffer. Tocano's face remained unreadable as he crouched beside her. Her breathing was faint, shallow. He touched her wrist. Her pulse fluttered like a broken bird's wing. He pulled a knife from his belt and cut her free, gently, like unwrapping a secret. Her arms dropped limply. Her body collapsed into him, unconscious. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. A scar trailed across her cheek, old but deep. He didn't ask what had happened. He didn't need to know. His shelter was a dugout near the edge of a creek, protected by brush and the angle of a limestone hill. He laid her on a bed of hides and moss, bathed her wounds with stream water, and fed her sips of broth made from rabbit and wild herbs. For 2 days, she drifted in and out of fevered dreams, muttering nonsense, sometimes crying out. Once, she screamed the word asterisk papa, asterisk so loud that birds scattered from the nearby trees. But she never opened her eyes. Tocano spoke only once during that time. He knelt beside her and whispered, "You live now. You are not theirs anymore." On the third morning, her eyes opened, blue like winter frost. She blinked at the ceiling, then at him. Her lips parted, dry and cracked. "Where? You are safe," he said quietly. "I found you. You do not need to run now." She flinched when he moved, but didn't scream. She pulled the hide tighter around her body and looked down, noticing for the first time that her dress was torn, barely holding together. He had covered her with dignity. "Why?" she asked hoarsely. Tocano looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because no one should be left to die like that, not even those who once called us enemy." Tears filled her eyes. "They weren't enemies. My pa sold me to them. Said I was too much trouble. A preacher's daughter, sold like a hog at market." Tocano didn't respond, but his jaw clenched. "I ran. They caught me. Said they'd teach me obedience." Her voice cracked. "I was never going to make it out." He said nothing, just handed her a warm cloth soaked in river water. She began to cry then, deep, ugly sobs that came from her bones. Tocano didn't try to comfort her. He just stayed nearby, watching, guarding. In the weeks that followed, she healed slowly. Her voice grew stronger. She began helping around the shelter, grinding corn, gathering herbs, learning the shape of this strange, quiet life. She spoke less of the past. Tocano never asked. One morning, she walked to the creek and stood watching the sun rise. He joined her. "You never told me your name," he said softly. She looked away. "I don't want it. It belonged to a girl they broke." Tocano nodded. "Then take a new one. One that is yours alone." She thought for a long moment, then looked up at the sky where morning burned orange against the clouds. "Then I want to be called Fire Sky, because I survived." Tocano nodded once. "Then that is who you are." From that day forward, she was Fire Sky, a girl reborn not by baptism or bloodline, but by will and a warrior's grace. Months passed. Word of settlers pushing west grew louder. Some Comanche bands still rode in war parties. Others signed treaties they knew wouldn't be honored. Tocano remained apart, but the world did not forget him. One night, 3 riders approached the dugout. White men, armed, cocky, and drunk with arrogance. Fire Sky hid behind the door, watching through a crack. "You the one living out here with that white girl?" One man sneered. "We heard rumors." Tocano stood silently, arms folded. "Just thought we'd come see if she's worth the ride back." The man laughed. "Ain't natural, an Injun and a white girl playing house." Tocano moved like wind and thunder. By the time the 3rd man reached for his gun, 2 lay bleeding on the ground, and the last ran screaming into the brush. Fire Sky came out slowly. She looked at the bodies, then at Tocano. "They'd never stop, would they?" "No," he said simply. "But neither do we." They buried the bodies far from the creek, under stones with no names. Fire Sky carved a sun into one rock, a reminder of how close darkness always followed light. She grew stronger each day, learned the language of the wild, how to set snares, track deer, whisper to horses. She laughed again. Sometimes she called him father, and sometimes she simply called him friend. But one evening, as they sat by the fire under a sky full of stars, she said, "You gave me more than life. You gave me a name." He smiled faintly. "And you gave me purpose again." They sat in silence as the fire crackled between them. Tocano had been alone so long, he forgot what warmth felt like. But Fire Sky, the girl he had found dying on a fence, had brought the sun back to his life. She had once been nameless. Now she was a legend, and in the heart of a fading frontier, a lonely Comanche and a broken girl had made a family the world could never understand, but would never erase.